All right. I'm showing 6 o'clock on my watch, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, and good evening. My name is Victoria Ortiz, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, or TRPA. And tonight we're going to be talking about environmental improvement projects that are happening on the West Shore this summer. So hopefully you're in the right space and logged on to the right webinar. We are going to do a quick overview of the evening here shortly and wanted to review some of the webinar guidelines. So as you've likely noticed, everyone is muted. And if you have any questions for the speakers, you are welcome to use the Q&A function on Zoom at the bottom of your screen. Just click on that, type a question in there, and then we will either answer that verbally or we will try to get back to you also on that chat function. So some questions may be summarized. If you don't see your question right away, that's because it's going to the panelists. And we will try to summarize some of those questions and answer them accordingly. So as you might have guessed, this is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording on the TRPA Vimeo channel with all of the registrants. So you will see that in a week or so. Next slide, please. We've got a full lineup for you tonight that's covering all of the following environmental improvement program projects. And we will be covering multiple projects under each focus area. So I'll dive into a little bit of what that means. But basically, after each of the focus areas, we'll have 5 minutes to answer any questions that come through for those panelists on our Q&A. And then if there's more that come in afterwards, they will be responding to those within the Q&A. And then we'll go on to the next focus area. And if we can't get to all of the questions, then we'll have more time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So as you can see, we've got a lot to cover, a lot in store for you tonight. So let's get going. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background. I know a lot of us are here listening today because we live, work, and/or play in Lake Tahoe, America's second deepest lake. And when some people come to Lake Tahoe, they might see what looks like a beautiful and pristine lake, but Tahoe has actually faced a lot of environmental threats over the years. From historic logging, development, and grazing, these have all caused Lake Tahoe's famous clarity to plummet over time. And fortunately, in the late 1990s, a lot of leaders came together to form the Lake Tahoe Environmental Improvement Program. And led by the TRPA in partnership with over 80 organizations, the EIP, or Environmental Improvement Program, was launched at the first Tahoe Summit with then President Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. And this unparalleled partnership works to achieve the environmental goals of the region. Next slide. So local, state, and federal government agencies, private entities, scientists, and the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California have collaborated for more than 25 years to restore the environmental health of Lake Tahoe. You can see the private entities that are listed here, but I also wanted to point out that you, the public, are a huge part of the success of the EIP by implementing best management practices, or BMPs, or making sure that your property has defensible space, even picking up dog poop and trash and participating in citizen science programs. You're directly contributing to the health of Lake Tahoe and the Environmental Improvement Program. Next slide. So this landscape scale collaboration is considered the blueprint for Tahoe's climate resiliency and falls into 4 categories or priorities that I mentioned on our agenda slide. So tonight we're going to walk you through key projects that are happening on the West Shore this summer in each of these categories. Next slide. Amazingly, in the last 25 years, partners have completed over 700 projects totaling over $2.6 billion with a B. And this funding is shared by all the partners that you saw listed on the previous slides. So you can get a general breakdown of how we all contribute to bringing these projects to fruition. Next slide. And we know that in Tahoe, our environment and our economy are inextricably linked. So in 2020, we conducted an economic analysis to quantify some of the economic impacts of the EIP. So as you can see, The direct investment of these projects has resulted in nearly double the economic output to the region and has supported over, on average, 1,700 jobs a year. So there's a lot of connections here between EIP projects and the health of our economy. Next slide. We're committed to being as transparent as possible, which is why we've pulled together an interactive website dashboard that shows real-time data about all of the EIP projects and expenditures. So if you're ever curious or interested, you can go to eip.laketahoeinfo.org and learn a lot more about these projects. Next slide, please. We've got a lot to cover tonight, as I've said a few times. So we're going to dive right in with the watersheds and water quality focus area, which focuses on improving Lake Tahoe's world famous clarity. And this includes aquatic invasive species prevention and removal and restoration projects like Meeks Bay. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Ashley with the United States Forest Service to talk more about the Meeks Bay Restoration Project.
Good evening, everyone. As Victoria mentioned, I'm Ashley Cyber. I work for the Forest Service, and I'm one of the leads on the Meeks Bay Restoration Project. And you can see here, this is a really nice aerial by John Peltieri. He gave us this photograph this past winter of Meeks Bay. So let's go to the next slide here. And I'm going to talk about the Restoration Project. And I think a lot of you are familiar with the history, but it's always fun to kind of go back and take another little look here. Meeks Bay has a long history of land use, and it dated back, of course, to when the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California used this area as a summer camp. It was established as a resort in the 1920s, and this photograph here of the 1940s, you can see it's been popular ever since. Go to the next slide. Marina was actually constructed on the site of Meeks Lagoon in 1960. So you can see in the aerial photographs here, the top photograph was in 1939, and you can see sort of in the middle of Meeks Bay there, the lagoon ecosystem with the creek sort of meandering through. And then in the bottom photograph there in 1965, you can see how the lagoon essentially now is a permanent marina and you can see how that changed the vegetation as well as changed Meeks Creek upstream of the lagoon as well. You can go to the next slide. And as a result of that marina, there was some pretty significant ecological changes that resulted in the area. And this project has been quite a few years in the making here, and really it resulted from concerns over multiple resources. So there's degraded habitat for native species with the loss of the lagoon ecosystem, and you can see in this oblique aerial here, the 1950s, that lagoon ecosystem there. Then the subsequent water quality issues that resulted in the marina itself, aquatic organism passage restrictions at the bridge over Meeks Creek. We'll see a picture of that in a minute here. Go to the next slide. The actual marina itself, the infrastructure is in need of a significant amount of deferred maintenance. And the marina doesn't really essentially make enough money to cover that deferred maintenance. It's really a subsidized activity. And then concerns over aquatic invasive species. You can see here in the photograph on the right, in 1995, there was not really a listed concern, but by 2012, Meeks Bay was a major contributor of Eurasian water milfoil, and it's really second only to the Keys as far as contributing to those aquatic invasive species in the lake. Next slide, please. And like I mentioned before, this is a little closer in shot of what that lagoon ecosystem looked like, and the marina really changed that hydrologic the system there, and this project is really looking to improve that hydrologic function. The processes of Meeks Creek itself, fixing the scour and erosion, restoring the degraded aquatic riparian and wetland habitats, in which you can see the examples of here, and also the barrier beaches. For anyone who's familiar with Taylor Creek or Talat Creek, where those creeks, essentially the mouth of those creeks, sometimes it's closed, sometimes it's open. It actually shifts throughout the year and from year to year, the location of it. And those are called barrier beaches. And that's what the system here in Meeks Creek originally had. And those barrier beach systems are really supportive of a wide variety of wetland ecosystems and also Tahoe yellowcrest. Take a look at the next slide here. And this is the bridge over Meeks Creek. And as I mentioned, there is this large constriction here for aquatic organism passage, so fish passage. They can't get upstream of this constriction here. So that impedes a lot of the restoration efforts. And the bridge itself essentially is in need of replacement as well. Go to the next slide. I mentioned Tahoe yellowcrest. It's an endemic species to Lake Tahoe. It grows only on the beaches, and these barrier beach systems really provide a rich habitat for that species. And Lahontan cutthroat trout, removing the restrictions at the bridge and providing more of a habitat for the small fry, the small baby Lahontan in the lagoon ecosystem as well. Next slide. And we're looking for opportunities to enhance educational and interpretive opportunities, really show people what this area used to be used for, as well as providing these ecosystems for the species of value to the Washoe tribe that they used to use. And this area was especially important for their ceremonies and summer camp areas. Next slide. We also want to maintain and enhance access to Lake Tahoe and National Forest System lands. In some instances, that may mean that the access looks a little differently. There's a couple examples here of some non-motorized access, kayak launches, etc. We want to provide sustainable recreation opportunities that are consistent with a functioning ecosystem. Next slide. So the Meeks Bay Restoration Project, like I mentioned, has been in the works for a long time. We went out to the public with scoping a couple of years ago. There's been an active stakeholder group that has been helping to inform alternatives. We currently have 3 action alternatives identified, as well as 1 no action alternative that will be analyzed in the triple document. It's a draft EIS, EIR, EIS, for those that are familiar with the environmental documentation lingo, and we are planning on releasing that here in the next couple of months. And when that comes out, there will be public workshops that are planned to really dive into the details of what those alternatives are. And on the next slide here, I'll just briefly mention that the alternatives in general, the 3 action alternatives all include restoration. And this photo on the right here is an example of what that restoration could look like. So you can see that lagoon ecosystem there, a pedestrian bridge to provide connectivity from the north to the south, interpretive opportunities, etc. And then the other features of the alternatives being, currently there's 1 alternative with a pier that could allow for boat up access, another alternative that has a pier, but it would be a pedestrian only pier. And then the third alternative is a restoration with no pier. And actually I should mention that there's a 4th alternative that sort of is a combination of quite a few of those elements from the other alternatives that is a no pier alternative. So next slide. And you can see here, you don't have to write these down. We'll be providing the slides, so you don't need to have these exact addresses here, but the top link there is for the general project website. For folks who want to get informed of the document release through the Forest Service system, you can go to that middle link there. And then anybody who has more questions about the project can email that link down on the bottom. And like I mentioned, there will be some more public workshops that really get into detail about the alternatives and answer folks' questions related to the actual environmental document when that comes out here, most likely in May. So I think that's what I have for the Meeks Bay Restoration Project.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. We're going to move right on into Emily's presentation from Keep Tahoe Blue, also within this watersheds and water quality focus area. And then we will take 5 minutes of questions about both of their presentations. So Emily, on to you.
Thanks, V. Thanks, Ashley, for queuing it up. My name is Emily Fry, and I am the Citizen Science Program Coordinator at the League to Save Lake Tahoe. Tonight, I'll be sharing with you a case study on early detection of aquatic invasive plants and rapid response to control and remove these infestations. Next slide. So at the League, we have a citizen science program called Eyes on the Lake. And since its creation in 2013, the Eyes on the Lake program has trained hundreds of community members to identify aquatic plants while they're out recreating at the lake. Next slide, or next button. Got some animation here. And report their observations to us using the free Citizen Science Tahoe web app. And we track all of these observations on a digital map similar to the one that you can see on the screen here. And this map is actually available to the public at all times, which you can see on our website, which I will link in a moment. So having all of these Eyes on the Lake, community members, Eyes on the Lake, has resulted in 8 previously unknown infestations being found by trained community members, which were caught early on when the populations of these plants were still very small and therefore easier and less expensive to control. Next slide, please. In 2016, the Eyes on the Lake program was formalized into the Marina General Permit for all public marinas on the California side of Lake Tahoe. What this means is that this created an annual requirement for marinas to attend an Eyes on the Lake training and conduct and submit at least one aquatic plant survey of their marina to Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board. Next slide. So in addition to these annual trainings that we provide, we visited all marinas in 2016 and again last year in 2021 to provide hands-on training to staff. And next slide. And take a look at their marinas for any aquatic plants currently present, native or invasive. Next slide. And to create and update marina plant survey maps such as this one. We provide these maps to marinas to help guide them in their aquatic plant surveys. The numbers that you see on screen are indicating where plants are most likely to be found based on wind and boat action. Next slide. So in the fall of 2021, last year, after attending an Eyes on the Lake training, Homewood Marina actually observed small amounts of invasive Eurasian water milfoil growing in the marina. They notified us at the League right away, and we worked closely with Tahoe Resource Conservation District and Tahoe Regional Planning Agency to verify the identification and make a plan of action. Next slide. Thanks to League funding, Marine Taxonomic Services, you can see on screen here, we're able to get divers in the water shortly after we were notified to conduct an assessment of the infestation. And in this case, because the population was so small, they were able to remove the plants at the same time. They returned again about a month later and pulled a few more plants that had sprouted since. And this year, we plan to keep a close eye on the marina as the water temperatures rise and warm up, and we'll reassess if plants continue to return. Next slide. So on screen here now, you can see examples of the plants that were actually pulled from Homewood Marina during this assessment. They're fairly small. If you're familiar with the Keys infestation, those plants get much taller. They can grow about 30 feet tall in the deepest depths of their habitat. And these ones in comparison are much, much smaller. So this was a very small, young infestation. So in conclusion, this occurrence and this situation is a testament to how well our Eyes on the Lake program works. Marina staff are being trained, they're armed with the knowledge and materials to identify plants accurately and detect infestations early on. They know they can contact the League to initiate a rapid response to control these infestations before they get much larger. Moving forward from here, we'll be working with Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and Tahoe Resource Conservation District to update and refresh this early detection rapid response procedure, including always having a rapid response funding source available, which will come from both private sources like the League, as well as public sources. And in order to ensure that these invasive plants are not spreading to new areas on the West Shore or reinfesting areas like Meeks Bay or Homewood Marina, you can help by joining us at a training this summer to learn how to identify native and invasive plants and report your observations on that free Citizen Science Tahoe web app. For more information on how you can join the program and to see upcoming training dates, visit our website which should be on the link on our screen, but I'm not able to see the full screen right now. I'll link it in the chat if it's not. And before I open up to questions about the Meeks project and this project, I want to give a special thanks to Homewood Marina and all of their staff, Tahoe Resource Conservation District, Marine Taxonomic Services, and Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And I'll go ahead and drop the link to our website in the chat right now for you to check out.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Ashley. Hopefully you'll have some future volunteers among the attendees here. So at this time, if you haven't already, we're seeing a few questions come through the Q&A. So thank you to everyone who is asking some questions. This first question, Ashley, is going to be for you about the Meeks Bay project. Is there a possibility of a boat launch as one of the alternatives?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to go through here. I've answered a bunch of them in the chat here. I don't know if you want me to go through all of them. This one I hadn't gotten to quite yet. So the boat launch, and I'll also say the hybrid marina / restoration option were analyzed in the beginning and then essentially deemed unfeasible, the hybrid boat launch piece. The amount of infrastructure that would be required in order to keep the marina system and the creek system hydrologically separated is immense. And essentially, when you have a smaller marina, even with the marina the size it is, it would not be able to pay for or come close to meeting the cost of that type of infrastructure or being able to maintain it into the future. And really, there with the hybrid type of system, there just was. We were not able to meet the restoration objectives either. So it just kind of didn't meet anyone's needs really. And then for the boat launch, we had proposed that originally in the original proposed action, and we got a significant amount of input from the public that if the boat launch could not be inside of a marina, that it was not desired to have a boat launch in Meeks Bay.
Great, thank you. I'm going to throw another one your way right now, which is what brought about the fourth option for the pedestrian pier?
Yes, and I apologize. I probably went over that really quickly. So the fourth alternative is a non-motorized alternative, which is essentially like the restoration alternative, but some of the other upland features kind of got mixed and matched, if you will, from some of the alternatives. So it's kind of all of the pieces that folks liked from all of the other alternatives. And a pedestrian pier was proposed as a way to provide a little bit of, you might say, mitigation for the loss of the recreation activity of the marina. Provide something new and different there. Pedestrian piers are highly desired on Lake Tahoe. So that was something that was proposed as a mitigation for the loss of the recreation opportunity in the marina.
Thanks, Ashley. And Emily, I'm going to direct this question to you. Do you try to track down the source of the invasive species when you see something like that happen at Homewood?
Yeah, ideally we would like to, but it's more difficult than you might think. There are significant infestations along the south shore of Lake Tahoe, and there are some on the east shore as well. So it is hard to track down which one it might actually be coming from. We do know that most of these plants are spread via boats. So it was most likely spread by a boat visiting Homewood Marina that had plants attached to some part of the boat, likely the propeller. And we do provide marinas with a boater questionnaire that they can use when they're pulling boats out or have boats visiting their marina. It's a basic questionnaire asking where they've been that day, where their boat has been in Lake Tahoe, in case something like this happens, so they can kind of see maybe where possibly that infestation came from. But ultimately, the response is still the same. We need to try to remove it and control it before it takes over. So.
Thank you. And just one other clarification to that, every boat that enters Lake Tahoe must be inspected for aquatic invasive species prior to entering Lake Tahoe. And so chances are that the Eurasian water milfoil came from another part of the lake and not from an outside water body.
Right. Thanks, Bea.
Absolutely. Okay, so there are some more questions coming through in the chat. So I'm going to ask Ashley and Emily to answer some of those via written responses. And we're going to move along now to our next section, which is where we will be talking about forest health. So next slide, please. We're going to be talking a little bit about how we're protecting communities from damaging wildfire, which I know is on the forefront of a lot of folks' mind, while restoring ecosystem health and enhancing wildlife habitat. And just one quick note, even though you'll see Tahoe Pines Campground on there, mostly what we wanted to point out is that you probably see these signs all around the lake. And these are just a note that they're EIP projects. So we just wanted to make sure that that connection was made. But right now I have the pleasure of introducing Rich Adams with California State Parks, who will be chatting a little bit about forest health.
Thank you. Hello, West Shore. I am with you. I live on the West Shore with my family. My kids go to school here and we ski at Homewood. We swim at Meeks Bay. The West Shore is our home. I cover a much larger area at work. I actually cover 6 counties. So I'm on the road a lot, but the West Shore is my home. This photo here I took of a pile burn operation. I was in charge of this operation on this day. This is at Sugar Pine Point State Park, right next to Tahoe. Slide. So I work for state parks. I'm the state parks forester for the Sierra District, and I'm the prescribed fire manager. I'm going to be focusing tonight on 4 of our large state parks on the West Shore: Burton Creek, Sugar Pine Point, DL Bliss, and Emerald Bay. And I'll be talking specifically about prescribed fire and what we've done and what we're planning on doing. Slide. So let's look at the types of prescribed fire that we use. On the left is a photo of a pile burn, and that is where fuels are piled up and then burned. This is a hazardous fuel reduction method. We can reduce fuel loading by 20 tons per acre, 30 tons per acre or more, and therefore we can reduce the potential intensity of a future wildfire. There in the middle is an understory burn where we're actually applying fire to the surface fuels. And so this is more of a restoration treatment, and it also reduces the fuel loading of not just piles, but everything on the surface, the sticks and twigs, needles, accumulated branches, pine cones. And then there on the right, the photo shows immediately after a prescribed burn. It's actually still smoldering. You can see the surface fuels have been consumed, and the area is much safer in terms of potential wildfire behavior. I mean, look at after the pile burn, fuels are reduced, but the surface could still ignite and carry fire. Whereas on the right, it's going to be really difficult to get a fire to actually carry through that burned surface. Let's dive into a little bit of why do we burn the forest? That's an excellent question. And so there are ecological reasons, looking at ecosystem function, and that these are fire adapted systems that developed with frequent fire. There are biological reasons. Part of the state park's mission is managing for biological diversity and for wildlife habitat. There are a lot of benefits to these from these low intensity fires. The biggest reason for me as a resident is safety of my community. And my community is much safer now because of these prescribed burns that have happened around my community. You might be watching the news during a wildfire and the reporter might say, this area hasn't burned in 50 years or 100 years. If this area has burned just 2 years ago, this provides opportunity for wildland firefighters to make a stand and to stop the advance. Wildland firefighters will actually use fire as a tool, such as during the Caldor fire, using backfiring or burnout operations to stop the spread of a wildfire. Slide. So let's look specifically at these parks. This is Burton Creek State Park up above Tahoe City, and these yellow polygons are where we have used understory burning as a tool, and then the labels are the years of those burns. So look near the high school, there's a burn that we did in 1995. And actually these plots provide a great tour of prescribed fire history. So you can see the 2009 burn plot out there on the ground actually still looks really good in terms of benefits from prescribed fire. And then these gray areas that are shaded gray on the map, this is where we're doing other forestry work. So we are doing thinning with hand crews. We've done logging, fuel reduction with pile burning and chipping, and just physically removing materials. Also these gray areas, some of them we're planning understory burning in the fall of this year. Slide. So moving down the West Shore, this is Sugar Pine Point, and these colored areas are all completed understory burns of the past. So we've really done a lot of understory burning at Sugar Pine. On the lake shore, there's an orange colored plot that says 1984. There's another plot in the center, 1984. Those were the first two burns that we did at Sugar Pine Point. So a long history of prescribed burning. Along the highway, I actually worked on those burns along the highway, 1998, 1999. And then I came back and burned those plots again 20 years later in 2018. What's not shown, this really highlights the burns, but what's not shown is that we're also doing forestry work in the campground along the boundary with Tahoe, around Erman Mansion and near the Glen Ridge neighborhood. Those activities will be continuing this year. Slide. So this shows DL Bliss and Emerald Bay. DL Bliss, we have projects ongoing in these shaded areas at the park entrance and near our shop. And then down there in the campground where we have, of course, people, human lives at risk. And then looking at Emerald Bay, again, looking at, where we have infrastructure, where we have roads. Something really exciting at Emerald Bay is we have some new funding from the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act for working at Eagle Point. There at Eagle Point, we have a campground with 100 campsites, up to 8 people per campsite. That's a community at risk during the summer. We actually did understory burns in the early 90s, 92, 93, 94, there at Eagle Point. And I want to prepare those plots so they're safe to reburn. Slide. So the biggest takeaway that I'd like to promote tonight is this website that's highlighted here, the TahoeLivingWithFire.com. This is a team effort. The Tahoe Fire and Fuels team is not just state parks, but our cooperators, our partners, the U.S. Forest Service, California Tahoe Conservancy, our partners on the Nevada side. When we do a prescribed burn, we post it on this website, and you can actually click on the little dot and some information will pop up about that prescribed burn. And this is both sides of the lake and active projects. And then I just want to also highlight this website on the right. It's actually the entire state of California. And you can zoom in and go back in time and again, click on the dot, and here it shows a California State Parks burn implemented in March there in the campground. So these are great resources. There's my contact information there at the bottom. Again, I cover 6 counties, 17 state parks. I'm on the road a lot, and right now I'm chasing hazard trees. We're dealing with drought conditions and hazard trees, and wow, there's a lot of work to do. But I'd like to go ahead and take some questions about prescribed fire and forest health.
Great. Thank you so much, Rich. We've had a few questions come in. So one of the first ones was, are there other fuel reduction measures that you ever engage in that emit less carbon?
Certainly. So, one of them is leaving areas alone. And we definitely don't want to burn everywhere. These burns are done strategically in certain places. But it's, in terms of carbon, leaving things alone allows for decomposition, which releases carbon. One thing that's exciting on this note is we do quite a bit of chipping, and we actually capture those wood chips. And then once a year or so, we send those wood chips to a cogeneration plant, where the cogeneration plant generates electricity. And that's, it's a growing technology. It's coming and going in terms of success, but it's something that we do really want to continue to strive for. And, another one is, instead of putting all these logs in the burn piles, we have efforts to capture these logs and support our campground firewood program. And by burning local wood, we can reduce the import of pests, like insects and disease. So not every area is appropriate for a prescribed burn. We try to use all the tools available.
Thank you. There was a question that came in about the differences on some of the conservancy and national forest lands. So can you speak a little bit to some of the cross-agency communication that happens in terms of managing forests overall on the West Shore?
Yeah, that's great. And again, I would refer to this slide here. The Tahoe Fire and Fuels team is that united effort, and we coordinate on different levels. As implementers of prescribed fire, we coordinate on who's going to be putting smoke in the air in what areas and on what days. And then there are other efforts to coordinate thinning around communities, and it's really an ongoing thing. There's the coordinated effort along the West Shore that really is already happening in terms of implementing work and continuing to stay in communication with each other.
Great. And then let's see here. We had maybe one more quick question here about, is a NEPA or CEQA required for prescribed burns? So obviously we have some highly educated attendees here. NEPA stands for National Environmental Protection Agency. Someone correct me.
Policy Act.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Policy Act. Clearly more educated than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can speak to that, Rich.
Yeah, National Environmental Policy Act, and CEQA is California Environmental Quality Act. And so these are environmental protection laws. On California state parks, we absolutely file CEQA documentation. And so a CEQA document is a disclosure statement. It describes the project and how we're going to protect the environment from impacts. It's not really a permit, it's a disclosure statement. So it says what we're going to do, and then we have to do it that way. NEPA is something that's done on federal lands. Sometimes if we're accepting federal funding, we may need to file both documents, or at least get a NEPA decision on our CEQA, that it meets the intent of NEPA. But it gets complicated, right? It really depends on who owns the property. So is it state, is it federal, is it local? And then, which environmental laws. And then, of course, in Tahoe, we follow TRPA code of ordinances. And then there are state regulations, whether you're in Nevada or California. And we find ways to implement the project and protect the environment.
Thank
Hey,
you,
Rich, can I add in here as well that related to the NEPA CEQA piece, there are some new laws that have come into play where in some instances NEPA can be accepted basically in place of CEQA under certain authorities. So it like Rich mentioned, it's a little bit tricky. There's not, a NEPA document and a CEQA document required for every single project. It really kind of depends. But the general answer is NEPA is required on Forest Service lands. And then as a requirement of the Lahontan Water Quality Board permit, CEQA is also required to be permitted under those projects on Forest Service land, on federal land.
Great. Thank you both. Rich, there are some more questions for you in the Q&A. So if you wouldn't mind responding to some of those in there. We will
Okay.
get back to those. So next slide, please. As many of you know, millions of people visit Lake Tahoe every year, which drives our annual $5 billion economy. And a corridor plan is underway along California's State Route 89 to improve safety and public access, while also protecting the special areas around Emerald Bay and the West Shore. So we are going to hear from Melanie Sloan with TRPA, followed by Kira Smith, who's also with TRPA, who is going to be talking about the basin-wide Tahoe Trails Plan. So take it away, Melanie.
Okay, thank you, V, and good evening, everyone. Next slide. As V said, my name is Melanie Sloan, Senior Transportation Planner with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. I'm the project lead for the State Route 89 Trail Feasibility Study. Next slide. So let's talk a bit about background. First, what's a trail feasibility study? Well, it's a planning process that in this case will identify a preferred path alignment. And here it's to fill a gap in the Tahoe Trail on the west shore of Lake Tahoe. So what's the Tahoe Trail? Well, it will be a paved multi-use path for walking and biking that will circle the lake. It's been identified as a priority for the region since 2012 and ever since in our regional transportation plans. And today, most of the Tahoe Trail has actually either been built or has been through a design process. For example, the section of the Tahoe Trail that ends at Meeks Bay. And then on the South Shore, we have an existing section of the Tahoe Trail that ends west of Camp Richardson. So this trail feasibility study is looking to find that path where we might be able to put a trail between those two sections to fill the gap. Now, the trail feasibility study, it's actually just one of several strategies that implement the State Route 89 corridor management plan that V mentioned. That plan was adopted in 2019, and it prioritizes completion of this section of the Tahoe Trail, but also others. And so TRPA is working with partners to identify and activate other priorities from that plan, like transit and parking management. Next slide, please. So the trail feasibility study and that corridor management plan, they really share similar vision and goals. And that's really about providing a safe and seamless travel experience while also providing access to diverse recreation offerings, better managing congestion that exists on the West Shore, and enhancing the environmental resiliency of the corridor. This trail feasibility study advances the corridor management plan goals by identifying that path alignment for that paved walking and biking path on the West Shore. Next slide, please. So the feasibility study is the first step of many to building this section of the Tahoe Trail. And that's in the graphic up top on this slide. So once this feasibility study is complete and there's a preferred path alignment identified, that recommendation would be handed off to a partner that has experience in designing, building, and maintaining walking and biking trails. And that partner will advance the recommendation through environmental review and more detailed engineering and design. You've heard a bit of this conversation in some of the prior presentations and some of that Q&A just now about what environmental processes projects go through. So that would be the next step with the preferred path alignment. And once funding is in place, a partner would complete the final design, receive the permitting, and actually build the trail. Now, given the length of this trail, it's possible that it will advance in segments like we see on the East Shore, where the first section from Incline Village to Sand Harbor was completed, and the next section from Sand Harbor to Spooner Summit has completed its design and engineering and environmental review and is now seeking funding to move to final design, permitting, and then construction. But let's go back to the first step because we're talking about the trail feasibility study here. So the trail feasibility study through winter of 2021 worked with the project team and the public to identify potential path alignments and criteria to evaluate each of them. Now through spring of this year, the team is evaluating those identified alignments using the evaluation criteria. And in May, we'll be coming to the public to seek input on the results of that evaluation. That input will help refine the evaluation and inform making a preferred alignment recommendation. And that is anticipated to happen in the fall, and there will be additional opportunity for public input at that time as well. Next slide. Now, as I said, this is about identifying an alignment for a paved walking and biking path on the West Shore. And the question is really at the simplest, where would this alignment be? Is it in the right of way of State Route 89 or the roadway, or is it outside of the roadway? And when it's outside of the roadway, where are potential alignments possible? And so the image on the left is a screenshot of the corridor with the different alignments that were identified to be evaluated. Now we have the final evaluation criteria listed on the right side image, and there's over 20 criteria that have been created from anywhere from access and operations and constructability to cost, environmental and landowner considerations, as well as user experience. Now, again, we're in the process right now and in the spring to apply these evaluation criteria to those identified alignments. And we'll be talking with the project's steering committee team, and again, coming to the public in May to receive input on the outcomes of that evaluation. Next slide. So to keep up to date on the process and the progress, and to be notified of those future public input opportunities, you can go to the project webpage. It's westshoretahoetrail.com. And again, this will be in the packet you'll receive as a registered attendee. And you can receive notices by signing up at that webpage for all future updates and opportunities. But if you want to talk more about the project, my contact information is here and will be shared in the packet as well. Please don't hesitate to reach out either via email or phone. I'm happy to talk about the project. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Melanie. You'll see in the Q&A, there are a few people who just shared some feedback for you. But again, if you have any questions for Melanie, feel free to throw those in the Q&A as well. And now we will pass it along to Kira.
Awesome, thanks, Bea. Hi everyone, my name is Kira Smith. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. And tonight I'll be presenting briefly on the Tahoe Regional Trails Plan with a focus on the West Shore. And I'm really excited to present this because this is the very first planning effort of its kind for the Tahoe Basin, focused entirely on creating a seamless, connected dirt trail system for Tahoe. And through this planning effort, we're bringing together land managers like California, Nevada State Parks and the Forest Service, trail stewards like Tahoe Area Mountain Biking Association and the Tahoe Rim Trail Association, and trail and environmental experts like the Tahoe Fund, Achieve Tahoe, and the Washoe Tribe of California and Nevada. And we're bringing all of those partners together to develop a coordinated vision for Tahoe trails. Next slide. So early last summer, we released a public survey asking respondents all sorts of questions about trail use, where they access trails, where they travel from, how they travel to trailheads, what types of recreation activities they participate in. And we got a lot of really rich data from that survey effort with almost 1,000 responses. And so this map in particular is showing some of that survey data, specifically trailhead use density on the West Shore. And we can see that the highest use is concentrated near Emerald Bay and around Fallen Leaf Lake. And we found that uses vary among residents and visitors at these trailheads, and that people are coming from all over the basin and outside the region. Next slide. So we also asked survey respondents to tell us what types of improvements they'd like to see at trailheads. People would generally like to see clearer signage and better directions at trailheads, better parking management and transit connections to popular trailheads like Emerald Bay, Sugar Pine Point State Park, and DL Bliss. And then people also want to see more ADA accessible trails and ADA parking at trailheads. And then overwhelmingly, we heard about the need for better waste management at trailheads and along trails, like more pet waste stations and signage about proper trail etiquette. Next slide. So I mentioned that Emerald Bay is one of the more popular trailhead locations, which I am sure comes as a surprise to no one. So we're still kind of working through a few of the proposals for this area, but there are some proposed trail improvements that I can share. And some of the proposed improvements that are planned are new bathrooms at the Eagle Falls trailhead. I'm not sure exactly on the timing of that. There's also trail maintenance planned on the Bayview Trail to improve the condition of that trail and accessibility for various trail users. We'll also see parking management and transit along the corridor, and that's kind of a major focus for planners, and we could start seeing some of those improvements in the next couple of years. And then if you look on this map, that green dashed segment is a new West Shore mid-slope trail that's currently being analyzed under NEPA in the current Forest Service Trails Plan. And this trail segment would help ease user conflicts on other trails through Desolation Wilderness, primarily providing a better option for bikers and alleviating conflicts between hikers and equestrians on the other trails. Next slide. And so then one of the other main areas that I mentioned on the West Shore is around Fallen Leaf Lake. And so for Fallen Leaf Lake, there aren't any new trails planned for this area, and the focus is really on just improving the trailhead conditions. And again, we're still kind of investigating the different projects in this area, but there are a few approved parking areas planned for Fallen Leaf Lake, which are kind of shown in the photos on this slide. And so those two areas, the top one at Fallen Leaf Lake Road and State Route 89, and the bottom at Fallen Leaf Lake Road and Tahoe Mountain Road, are two kind of informal parking lot areas. And so the goal is to formalize these parking areas by paving the lots and reducing erosion. And then there's also a bike path extension planned to Tahoe Mountain Road and some road rehabilitation that will happen in this area to improve the recreation experience. And next slide. So that is pretty much it for now. And if you are interested in learning more about the Trails Plan and about our planning process, please visit tahoetrailsplan.org. We also have an interactive web map on that site and a survey dashboard where you can kind of interact with some of the data that we collected from our public survey this last summer. And then feel free to email us with questions or comments.
Great. Thank you, Kira. Thank you, Melanie. Time flies when you're having fun. So since we have one more wonderful speaker lined up for you, Kira, I'm going to ask you to just respond to questions in the Q&A. Same with you, Mel. And we will jump right over to Sarah. So everyone here has a role to play in stewarding or taking care of Lake Tahoe, and science is really leading the way to help guide those policy decisions. So next up, we have Sarah Hawkinsmith with the Tahoe Institute for Natural Science to talk about how you can get involved with citizen science projects in Tahoe. And Sarah, you're muted.
I said, thank you so much for having me, and we'll go to the next slide. So again, my name is Sarah Hawkinsmith, and I work for the Tahoe Institute for Natural Science, or better known as TINS. We are a small nonprofit here in the Tahoe region, and our goal is basically connecting people to nature. And we do that through research. I work under Dr. Will Richardson's PhD, as well as through education in schools and also public outreach. Next slide. So we are part of quite a few terrestrial projects on the West Shore, one being bird banding at Blackwood Canyon, where we collect data on migratory and local birds that stay here year round, in hopes to discover a little bit more about migrations and population patterns. In addition, I'm sure many of you have seen the bald eagle stories in the newspaper, but we are the lead organization that conducts bald eagle surveys in the winter. We have also partnered with state parks, conducting research on various rabbit species here in the area, such as the snowshoe hare and white-tailed jackrabbit. But what I'll be talking about tonight is our citizen science project about wildflowers. So if anybody is interested in wildflowers, you should definitely tune in. Next slide. So just a general explanation of what citizen science is. It's basically a symbiotic relationship between scientists and the public that allows both to work together and collect data and collaborate on research. So instead of just having scientists go out and collect data, we have the public get involved, whether they are novice or whether they are wildflower experts. And we just want to get as many wildflower observations as possible. So as mentioned previously in this presentation, Emily Frey from the League to Save Lake Tahoe, they have their Eyes on the Lake program. So that's another example of citizen science. Next slide, please. So the Tahoe Institute for Natural Science, we're hosting our third Tahoe Wildflower Big Year. And for those that are not familiar of what a big year is, it's how many different species of wildflowers we can see in the 2022 calendar year. And we're also using this to celebrate the many hundreds of plant species that make Tahoe their home. We use a website called iNaturalist, of which you take a photo of a flower outside your home or while you're hiking, and then you upload it to that iNaturalist page, and then either a artificial intelligence will identify that flower for you, or an expert will go and identify that flower for you as well. Next slide, please. Why Tahoe is such a unique location in terms of a variety of terrestrial organisms is because we have very steep slopes in terms of topographic change, as well as different soils, different habitats, various microsites, and then just in general, a lot of different aspect changes. So as you go up in elevation from 6,000 feet all the way up to the high 10,000 feet mountain ranges, you're gonna find a vast diversity of different flowers. And we hope that people can help get involved and conduct observation studies on these flowers. Next slide, please. So we have put on this Tahoe Wildflower Big Year in the past, and our first one launched in 2016. And then in 2019, we also had another Tahoe Wildflower Big Year, all of which we collected 13,000 different wildflower observations from the public, from novice and wildflower experts and scientists. So the cumulative total of all those wildflowers gave us a better understanding of what grows in this area, what time those plants grow, and where they're being located. So again, if you are new to these or just wanting to be more interested in wildflowers and getting involved, this could also be for you as well. During that 2019 study, we found well over 1,000 different species, which is a lot for our region. And we were able to even detect a flower that was more so rare to the area. So next slide. So we had a gentleman, his name is Bob Sweat, and he became very enthusiastic with wildflowers and just went out every single day and started taking pictures of various flowers. And he actually found a stream orchid near Emerald Bay, of which hadn't been discovered in the Tahoe area since 1950. So this project is putting flowers back on the map in terms of rediscovery and allowing us to really check in with those population status of different flora that live in the area or inhabit the area. Next slide, please. So again, we use the site or the platform called iNaturalist. So for those that aren't familiar with it, we actually are going to be putting on a webinar of how to take pictures of these flowers and get accurate photos in which we can help identify those photos. In addition, it gives placement in terms of a GPS location so we can find out which flowers grow in various microsites. And not only is all this information collected for the Tahoe region, but it's very important to have all these different observations, because if we have a better understanding of what grows here, then in the future, or even not even close to being too far out from the future, we can detect what has changed and help land managers such as Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and other organizations make informed decisions on progressive changes that we can implement in land management. Next slide, please. So a couple West Shore flower hotspots that I would encourage if people are interested in the project is to go hiking out near Meeks Creek, up by Page Meadows, Barker Pass, Blackwood Canyon, Lake Forest Beach. These are all areas that have a vast diversity of wildflowers, and these are some areas where we would encourage people on the West Shore to go participate in this project. Next slide, please. So the Tahoe Wildflower Big Year isn't just about ID. We also want people to better understand their natural environment. And when someone understands where they live or are able to identify the different flora and fauna that inhabit their home, they will take more time to care and steward that area. So not only are we providing this project in terms of data collection and citizen science, we'll also be offering 50 or 60 wildflower walks this summer, as well as wildflower photography courses, gardening with native plant courses, and then again, wildflower sketching, just to help you better understand wildflowers in terms of ID and understanding. I will put our website, because we're kind of short on time, here in the chat box. So if you have any questions, you can go to this website to learn more about the Tahoe Wildflower Big Year, TINS, and how you can be involved in this project. But that being said, thank you so much for all the organizations that have included that have included TINS tonight, and I'll be taking questions from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. We do want to be mindful of everyone's time. First off, a huge thank you to everyone for participating tonight. Thank you for joining us. I hope you are walking away with some information about what's going on in your neighborhood and on the West Shore. Our panelists are happy to stick around for a few more minutes here and answer some questions. So if you have more, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. One question that came in for you, Sarah, is, for instance, flowers that are rare or endemic, is there any sort of way that you protect their locations publicly? Or anything?
So that is a great question for a lot of organizations that are land managers. So we are just conducting research in a partnership with land managers, and for specifically at Meeks Bay, for example, they rope off and they protect those areas where the Tahoe yellowcrest grows, as well as when you're hiking up Mount Friel, there's areas that are protected where Tahoe draba, another endemic plant to the Tahoe region, isn't being stomped on. So other organizations that have also previously talked in this presentation, they can also answer that question as well.
Great. And we've gotten a few questions tonight about non-motorized watercraft. So Emily, I was hoping you might be able to speak a little bit to how we can prevent aquatic invasive species through non-motorized watercraft.
Yeah, so at the League, we highly recommend anybody that owns a non-motorized watercraft to get involved in the Tahoe Keepers program, which is run by the Tahoe Resource Conservation District and also co-run by Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. This is a great program to get involved in, to properly learn how to clean, drain, and dry your non-motorized watercraft, which is highly recommended after every launch, no matter where. Even if you're going from Lake Tahoe to Lake Tahoe, as I mentioned before, there are invasive plants located in some parts, but not all of Lake Tahoe. So definitely get certified in that program if you own a non-motorized watercraft. You can also, of course, get trained in the Eyes on the Lake program, just to be extra cautious of what you're seeing plants-wise and invasive species-wise around you. And one thing I want to mention as well, specifically about motorized versus non-motorized and the risk involved in transporting, is that with non-motorized watercraft, there are far fewer places for invasive species to hide on those. If you picture a paddleboard, for example, there are no crevices on paddleboards that water can collect in or invasive species can be caught in. So the risk is lower. However, we still want to make sure we're being safe, and it's always a good idea to know what you're looking for and to prevent the risk and lower the risk of spread. V, do you want to share a link to the Tahoe Keepers program so people can get certified?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll throw that in the chat here shortly. We have gotten a couple questions about Homewood Mountain Resort, so I just wanted to touch on that briefly. So the resort owners haven't submitted formal plans, so we don't know when we might be getting a proposal, but we do share a lot of your inquiries about potential changes to the project, and so we're hoping to get more information from the project applicant soon. And let's see, did we get any other questions, or does anyone, any of our panelists, did you want to speak to any of the questions that you've been answering on the Q&A?
You know, if I could just really quickly mention to folks, there's a lot of projects on Forest Service lands, especially on the West Shore coming up here, and we've highlighted a couple of them here. Some folks have talked about the Basin Wide Trails project in the chat. I would just encourage everybody to go on the Forest Service website, the Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit Forest Service. If you search for that on Google, it'll come up. And recently we did update the websites for a little better mobile viewing and accessibility. So they have changed a little bit. But there's a couple of spots. If you go under the actual project page, you can sign up for individual projects to be notified of any updates or any upcoming comment periods, etc. And you can also sign up for just general Forest Service updates as well. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look at that. That's a really great way to be informed, especially of these comment periods, because your comments really help us to make the projects better. So thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Anyone else? Great. Well, a huge thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you to all of our attendees. Hope you walked away with some new information. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the session, we will be posting this recording on the TRPA Vimeo page, and we'll be sharing the slides and this recording with all of the attendees. So we're going to go ahead and close this for now, but thank you again and have a great rest of your evening.